everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Who Gives a Dram. And as you can see, I've got two very special guests here with me today. Today's going to be a little bit of a different episode. Today, we're not going to be reviewing one whiskey, two whiskeys, or even three whiskeys. We're going to be doing a flight of Canadian whiskey today, Canadian Rye Whiskey. And I thought to myself, who better to share this experience with and to either find a new love or reestablish my hate for Canadian whiskey than with my two favorite Canadians. So I have Darryl, aka Whiskey Sith, and Mike, aka Whiskey Morgue, joining the show once again. Fellas, how you guys doing?
We're here for the Canadian takeover.
Yeah. This is actually, you can barely tell, but this is like an exorcist shirt. And I think we're gonna exorcise the demons out of you and make you, convert you to have faith in Canadian whiskey. So
you were thinking about that tagline all day, weren't you?
You know what? It was literally 5 minutes before. I was wearing a Ratty t-shirt just before we got started, and then I was like, this came in the mail recently. I'm like, oh, let's do it.
That's impressive, right off the cuff. That goes to your talent. So obviously, you guys are both Canadian. You guys have both been on the show. I have spoken to you guys privately and I think publicly. I think we've talked about it on the show before too, about just my lack of taste of Canadian whiskey. I haven't had a whole lot. I haven't really tried to pursue much. Growing up as a 20 to 21-year-old, lots of Crown and Cokes, lots of just Crown Royal. And right off the top of my head, that might be the extent. I'm not positive about that, but Darryl, why don't you talk about kind of what we're drinking today?
Well, I like how you said your lack of knowledge and that we've talked about what you've had in Canadian whiskey. It's more of a complete disdained view of Canadian whiskey, if you will, almost to a hate level, I think.
Yeah, I feel a little bit of hate there. I think he says we've had a conversation about it, but I'm pretty sure in passing in our last episode, Canadian whiskey came up and he quickly was like, yeah, shit, and then moved on.
Yeah, they're short discussions.
Yeah,
but we've been talking about this in the DMs for a bit now too, about like doing this episode and everything, and like you guys know this is basically 2 versus 1. You guys are trying to transform me into a Canadian whiskey drinker, and I hope you do. I really, really hope you do. But I want the people to know kind of what we're sipping on, because we have a lineup of 4 different Canadian ryes here, all generously provided by Mr. Whiskey Sith. But since they're your samples, Darryl, why don't you say, what exactly they are?
Yeah, we'll talk about each one as we go through them for sure. What I've sent you is all a lot 40 lineup. Lot 40 recently was one of these bottles was awarded the top rye whiskey at the World Whiskey Awards for 2021. A lot of people love it. The Lot 40 brand has been around since 2012. I believe the original Lot 40, which will be the first one we're sipping on, I think it's in the top 5 whiskeys sold worldwide. I think one of the reps for it posted that recently. So I'm pretty excited to see what you're going to think about these whiskeys. They're Canadian, born and raised whiskeys, but they're not what we would define as a Canadian whiskey because they're a rye whiskey. They're 100% rye. They're all small batch. 2 of them are cask strengths. One of them is from what they call the Rye Exploration series that they've just started to launch. So it's number 1 in that series. I haven't even tasted it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what all 3 of us think of that limited release. But the first one we're going to jump into, it's the Lot 40 original. It's the 100% rye. It's a small batch. I think it's finished in a number 3 char barrel.
Interesting.
So, start nosing that and let me know what you think of it on your nose. You just recently, depending when this one airs, you did a Whistle Pig 10 review, which is also a Canadian sourced rye whiskey from Alberta.
Canadian source, you wouldn't know it by looking at anything on the bottle. You really have to do your research. But Yeah, 10-year. They source that 10-year Canadian. It's Canadian rye, and they source it, and they basically just bottle it at Whistle Pig, from what I understand.
Yeah, they do some finishing in different barrels and stuff to make it their own. But it should say on the back of that Whistle Pig that it is from Canada. Whistle
Yeah,
Pig's
it's
pretty transparent with where they source their
I was gonna say the
ryes from.
product of Canada. Yeah.
Dave Pickerel there was really like ahead of the movement in terms of kind of figuring out like Canada's I guess MGP and sourcing all that while Whistle Pig started distilling their own stuff. But yeah, I mean, he was always very, very transparent about it. But I think that's what's interesting, and I guess we'll get into it more later, but this idea of like, I guess, shitting on Canadian whiskey, but yet like so much of perhaps what you're drinking or what a lot of people in the States are drinking is Canadian whiskey, aside from the stuff that we're going to look at here. That's obviously, actually Canadian whiskey.
Yeah. It's so true. Like, so much whiskey is sourced from up here. Hiram Walker and Sons, which is the brand that owns Lot 40. They're actually the largest distillery in North America. They distill 180,000 liters, or to bring this to the US, just under 48,000 gallons of alcohol every 24 hours.
Yeah, that sounds better.
It's not all being bought by us. Canadians love their whiskey. We love to drink.
Little book.
We're not drinking that much.
Little book. Little book, really? What does Little Book go for up in Canadian dollars?
200.
So, and then what is that in dollars?
No dollars. Already started.
I think it's about 100,000 rupee or ruples.
Rupees, yeah.
I think
would
the
assume
conversions are about 30%.
Yeah, roughly 30%.
So 180 is what 170-ish.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm trying to think of what I see it for up here. Because now, completely off topic while we're nosing this, whiskey hunting season. We're in the middle of it. It's you're looking everywhere. So lots of little books around here. It's probably one of the most like allocated bourbons that I see when I'm going hunting. And
Right.
I never buy it, and I don't know if I ever will. I just don't know if it's up my alley. But
I mean, I don't want to go too far into it, but I think what's interesting is like Darryl and I will see bookers come up here and little book, and it'll sit for a while. Like it's not even something that moves that fast. But then I feel like a lot of people are complaining about the price, but I'm like, really, a lot of these craft bottles are going for around the same thing. And I was like, maybe they're just ahead of the game and just kind of pricing it a little bit higher and saying like, whereas like, here again, they still price Weller Antique for 65 Canadian. So,
right.
Which I guess would be what, like probably $50 for you guys. So it is bucks Canadian. Was that really Canadian saying $50?
No, that's actually not. I say that all the time. It's not as Canadian as saying pop.
See how paranoid I am now being on the podcast.
If you start saying words like pylon instead of cone.
Oh my God, so Canadian.
Yeah. Sneaker, running shoe. It's the benefit of having family in the US.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't know about you guys. I'm not getting a whole lot of diversity on this first one. This is the original Lot 40. Is there an age statement on it?
This, I think it's 5+ years, depending when they bring it out. So it's new oak barrels.
Okay.
It's small batch, copper pot distilled.
Okay. And it's 100% rye.
100% rye, and it's 43% alcohol by volume.
It's interesting that's 100% rye, because I'm getting more like the first thing that jumped out to me, again, I'm a very novice Canadian whiskey drinker, is I got like a lot of, well, not a lot, but like more of like a maltiness on it, almost like a kind of like a Highland Scotch, something like that. Not as potent, but like a hint of maltiness. But then there's also a nice like like a fruit to it too. Those are the two that jump out to me the most. I don't know what you get. What do you guys get?
I always get dill on rye.
Mm-hmm. But this one, I get almost like I don't know, off the bat. I always, every time I sip this, I get like a fresh bread, like rye bread.
Yeah, I get that too. I don't eat dill and I don't smell dill, so I have an idea of what dill is, like what it would smell like based on the sunflower seeds. That's where the extent of my smell of dill comes from.
I feel like with rye, it's one of those things where I don't confidently use dill, but I feel like what I'm picking up in the background in a lot of the ryes, I'm going to assume is dill, but I just don't really know if that's it. Like but I'm not confident enough to throw it out there and be like, that's what I got. I got dill. But I feel like there's always that one characteristic, I guess, like what Darryl was saying, that I kind of tend to pull from a lot of ryes.
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing on the palate too. Like it kind of translates from nose to palate pretty wholeheartedly. Like I suppose maybe what I'm think is like a malted barley type of thing, which just makes no sense. I don't know why I taste that, but maybe that's dill. Maybe I just don't know it. But I get like a fruitiness on it, like almost like a fresh fruit on it.
Yeah.
And that's really it. Like there's not a whole lot. Rye spices on there. It's rye forward, but not a whole lot of like additional like backwards notes.
And I think this is because of where this is in the lineup. It's the every rye bottle.
Mm-hmm.
You can sip it neat. You can put it on the rocks. You're making cocktails out of it. You're drinking it however you want. You can throw it in your Coke or Pepsi. It's not an expensive rye. It covers a lot of range with it. With that, there's not a lot of depth. And you're right, there's definitely fruit in there. Not to give things away, but that'll come out in another one of these much later.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think what do you think of this compared to other Canadian whiskeys? The hard part with Canadian whiskeys is we can call rye on anything. Like we can sell a Canadian whiskey that doesn't even have rye in it, and still call it Canadian Rye Whiskey. So compared to some of the whiskeys you've had that are called Canadian Ryes, where do you think this falls?
I mean, compared to Crown Royal, this is light years better, but you know, I get a lot of the same aspects as a lot of ryes made in the States too. Like there's that subtle spice note. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Michter's rye. It's got like a sweet, like a fruity sweet aspect to it. What's throwing me off here is that maltiness that I'm getting. And that could be that dill pickle. It could be like the rye bread. Maybe I'm just associating it with malt, but that's what's making it stand out. And I don't hate it. Like I actually quite like it. And although it's not there's not a lot of things going on, that's different to me. And I like different. So what's the price on this?
This one, 39 up here.
Yeah, $39.
Okay, so this is going for what, 20, 30 bucks down here?
Yeah,
probably. Yeah.
And like Darryl said, I think it's like a really great baseline, because that being said, again, evaluating for like value and the bottle, and like again, its flexibility, it's, you know, made to maybe if you want to sip or cocktails. I think like as a baseline, it's solid, considering, you know, it's under, at least for the prices we see here for being under $40. I think it's a good baseline.
Yeah, I'd give this like a solid. It's not really in my range. I'd probably have it on the shelf, just to have it as a cheap rye. Yeah. I'd probably get like a 7.9. It's not bad.
See, I think for that reason, I like I've had it a whole bunch of times, but when I got into like whiskey collecting and bourbon collecting, I completely started ignoring the Canadian stuff here and being like, oh, like, yeah, lot 40. Like if I'm having people over and I need some mixer and I want to offer like a bar rail spread, like I would pick lot 40 and throw it in there. But then in my head, I guess it was like, being a little bit too highbrow, and then that's where I started looking south to all the other stuff out there that you're hunting, and started ignoring, I guess, the Canadian side of things, right? So, but I'll elaborate on that after.
Yeah,
interesting.
And this original rye is the base for a lot of whiskeys, whether people admit it or not. A ton of it goes down to the States. They're mixing it in for their rye forward bourbons in some cases. Some of the ryes, like we said, are directly from it. So you've probably had it before, and you might start to recognize it now in some of your other bottles that you start to taste that are rye forward.
Very interesting. But what do you guys give it for a score?
I think I'm like, sorry, go there.
Yeah, I'm right around that. I think that's 7.5 mark. It definitely gets marks for bang for its buck. It's one of those bottles that you just always have sitting around. I blend it with even whiskeys I've got sitting on the shelf because it blends so well into stuff. So interesting. You can do like a 1/3 to 2/3 blend with something, or a 50-50, and just change the flavor of one of your favorite bourbons or whiskeys. And it's a lot of fun to play with just from that aspect.
I haven't done any of that myself, but now I want to go into like trying to blend a little bit of it, right? I've never, aside from an infinity bottle, I've never dabbled with blending. But knowing that like, that it really is the baseline. I mean, for everything we're going to have here tonight, even, it really does blend and mix well. But I'd give it a 7.5 as well for again, just kind of like value. It's, again, there's to me, there's like nothing special, but it's not intended either, right? But it's just a solid representation, I guess, of like a baseline Canadian rye, and is really the foundation for so many other things.
Maybe I'm being generous. I just gave this a higher score than both of you guys. Am I being generous? Am I being too nice? Do I got to play hardball now?
I think you're just setting us up, starting on the right way.
That could be.
I think he's got a conflict inside. He really actually likes it, but
yeah.
But I don't want to.
But the score has betrayed him.
I stamped it. I can't take it back. No takebacks. And just to remind everyone, I did not this is a Canadian masterclass. This is Canadian Whiskey 101 with the two experts. I purposely did not research anything about Lot 40 like I usually do before my episodes, because I want to be schooled. This is me learning and just drinking with friends. So
and it's a lot more interesting seeing you just go into it blind like this, right? So
yeah, this is fun. I've never, like I said, never done a flight on the show. This is really fun. So let's go into number 2.
Whiskey number two, we're moving into.
I forgot to pour number 2, but yeah,
that's all right. Number 2 is the dark oak. So this originally was a limited release, I believe, just in Alberta. No, sorry, just in British Columbia. It gained a lot of traction. Everybody loved it. And then this is the one that won the World Whiskey Awards for World's Best Rye last year. Right. I have a conflict of opinion on that. I don't want to sway you either way on it. So this again is another 100% rye. It would be what you call your double oak. So it's the original lot 40, and then they move it into I think it's a number 4.
Yeah, number 4.
Number 4
4. Yeah. So it goes from a number 2 to a number 4, and I think it's finished in the number 4 for about 7 or 8 months. After it won the awards, it was launched across Canada. I don't know if it's been shipped down to the States. I know a lot of people looking for it. So let's dive into this one.
It smells. It's similar to the baseline, but it's way enhanced. I like this nose on. I actually quite enjoy the nose on this. You can tell it's double barreled. There's like that oak is present. I still get a little bit like that maltiness. That's probably dill. That's probably what I'm smelling, but I just don't know what dill is.
It could be dill. It could be the rye. Rye can, like, you've got your rye bread, you've got your sourdoughs, you've got your pumpernickel.
Yeah.
And who knows, like, what did you eat tonight that's affecting
Good point.
what's on it.
I
I've done episodes where I've had like way too much wasabi and I can't smell anything. So
good point.
This
don't
one
do
for
that when
me,
you're doing reviews.
the difference between the first and this one here is definitely I mean, Darryl kind of alluded to it, is like the dried fruit. I almost say like a candied fruit. A little bit comes through like, well, I mean, we won't jump ahead, but I just kind of recently did this one for a post, and I remember saying, I said it was like a Italian panettone. I don't know if it's just the Italian. I mean, I know you love Italians, Connor, but
oh, I love Italians. I love it. My totally off topic. My TikTok is flooded with Italian videos because that's all I like, is people just doing Italian stuff. I watch highlights of I've never watched The Sopranos, but I watch highlights of The Sopranos like it's my job. I should get paid to do that because it's all I watch. I like, I'll take a break at work. Yeah. And I watch Sopranos highlights. It's the best. It just makes me laugh so hard because being Italian is just, it's just a different level. I just got a lot of that dried fruit, like on that sniff. More of like you mentioned that candied fruit. I get more of just like a sugary candiness on this just in general. Just a nice, like, kind of like a what am I trying to say? Like a white sugar, like a, what do you call that? Whatever it is. It's not like a brown sugar, not like something like a little bit darker. Like just like a candy, like a, just, it's the nose on this is way better than the first one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, like the sweetness, I almost get like a molasses.
Yeah, I think with the going into the second barrel, I get a lot more of those caramels, toffees out of it, vanillas. It starts to smell more like what you would expect out of a bourbon because it's got that heavier char into it. They are all new oak barrels. So just that extra char on it finishes it. It's quite a bit darker if you still have some of the original left in your glass. To compare them, it's significantly darker.
And significantly better on the palate. This is light years ahead. This is a more of that sugar, like that molasses. You can tell this is double barrel. That's got that like those key characteristics of like a very forward sweetness, dark fruit, sugar, a bit more of an oak presence. I don't get any of that, what I presume is dill on the palate. This is like sweet. What's the proof on this, Darryl?
The proof would be, do quick math.
I would
90,
guess
94.
I was gonna say 97.
This is what converted me. Like, so I mean, Darryl will probably speak to like the Cask Strength and all the buzz around the Cask Strength releases. But for me, I was late to the party. But when I had this, and I was like, okay, like I've had regular Lot 40 a whole bunch. And I mean, there was obviously that, like we mentioned, like the limited release, and then it was like, was it going to be released to everybody? And when I got my hands on it, I was like, okay, here we go. Like, this is where, Dr. Don there is kind of flexing his muscle and putting something out there where, like, me, who's kind of turned my back on the Canadian market, was brought home and being like, okay, we can put out some really cool stuff and really some quality stuff. So this is what kind of converted me back to paying attention more to the Canadian releases.
Yeah, this is converting me too. This is fantastic. What are we looking at for an MSRP on this thing?
So when it first launched, it was $79. It's now since dropped to 60 in our area, which I think is a much more realistic price for it. So it'd be 50-ish.
I'd pay $50 for this all day. This is very reminiscent to me of almost like a Old Forester 1910, like a double-barreled higher rye content bourbon. If you gave this to me blind, I don't know if I would guess that this is 100% rye. I don't think I would.
But you know what? I'm glad that Darryl's bottle is kind of deep in, because like even mine, so I'm here on this one. But I hate to be like the cliche guy, but it really opened up
It
tremendously.
opens up huge.
Yeah. When I first had it, I was impressed, don't get me wrong, but I felt it was a little bit drier, and like I felt like I got a little bit more of like the oak tannin on it. And I was like, okay, it's great, but like I wasn't really wowed by it. And it's funny because not long ago when I revisited it, I was like, wait, I feel like I was a lot harsher on this, or it's changed now that I'm deeper in the bottle. But I just like fell in love with it recently again, because I'm like, it's now that it's opened up, it's just almost like a whole other rye. So when I saw you pouring the samples, I was like, okay, he's deep in the bottle, so we're kind of at the same point, and
Sweet.
it's opened up, had the chance to open up.
Yeah, when we first opened it, a few of us opened it together, and all of us had this like, where's the flavor in this rye? Everything that we love about Lot 40 is muted. There's not any depth to this. Once it got to about a quarter down, then it started to open up. The air's gotten into it. I'm not a believer of, the neck pour of a bottle. You got to get past that for it to do it. This is one bottle where I'm like, the neck pour doesn't do any justice to this.
Wait, you aren't a believer as in you don't believe in it, or
No,
you're
I
not a
don't.
believer?
I don't believe in it. I think you can pour a brand new cracked bottle of whiskey, let it sit in a glass for 15, 20 minutes, swirl it around, get the air in it, and it's not going to change again until you got less than half in the bottle.
I agree with that. But I think, and this is based on one bourbon that I had, I bought a few weeks ago. I don't want to give it away because I'm going to review it soon. So I'll tell you guys off camera, but I bought it. I cracked it open right when I got home with my brother, and it's a very hyped up bottle, and we both sipped it, and we're nose is good. Palate, oh, this tastes good. The finish came and it was disgusting, and I was like, man. And I'll tell you what bottle it is after the after. But I have a feeling that this bottle is gonna be better as more oxygen gets into it, and it is open. So I consider that like a bad neck pour, in my opinion. But I understand where you're coming from, though.
Yeah, and I think whiskeys in general, they change over time with the air, and especially like, I've got way too many bottles sitting on the shelf that have like 2-3 ounces in them, and I just need to finish them because
so hard.
They're gonna have way too much air in them, and they're losing alcohol, and they're gonna change so much. But we're getting off topic from Canadian Rye.
Hey, listen, we don't need to get off topic Canadian Rye, because I'm giving this like this is gonna be a big one. I'm giving this like if I could find, probably like an 8.7. 8.7. Yeah, this is delicious. I would scoop this in a heartbeat if I could find it.
Well, maybe we'll figure out if we can get a bottle down to you somehow.
It's a big thing of essential beard oils.
Yeah.
Fittingly, we all have a little bit of a beard here, so that actually worked really well.
Yeah,
it's weird when you ship like somebody who doesn't have a beard, or a girl or something like that. Beard oil. It's like, no, I better mark this one as essential oils.
Or maple syrup.
Yeah.
Maple syrup.
Yeah, and then they just give it a shake. Wait a second.
Thin.
But it's coming from Canada. If it's coming from Canada, so it must be maple syrup, because what else is up there? So
what else is up there?
Gotcha.
So a little history on Lot 40, where the name came from. I'd like to give a little Canadian background, if we can, for a moment.
Little story time, yeah.
A little bit of story time. It's not very long. So the original master blender created this Lot 40 back in 1998. His name was Michael Booth. This is his interpretation of how 100% rye whiskey would have been made by his forefather, Joshua Booth. So I guess he brought over this rye whiskey recipe when he immigrated to Canada. The name of Lot 40 actually comes from when Joshua immigrated to Canada. The plot of land that was given to him was actually named Lot 40.
Wow.
So that's 7 generations ago. And that's where this name came from. And I think that's pretty interesting. There's not a lot of Canadians aren't great like Americans of keeping that kind of history and using names and keeping buildings and stuff like that. That's one thing I love about when I'm in the States is like you can go and like there's buildings from like way back and they've been preserved. Here it's like, no, let's tear that down. It's not historical and it's gone.
Where
So
I
that
am,
you
there
get
is
that on a bottle.
Where I am, there are areas. So I'm in an old fishing and whaling town, and well, as you know, the Hartford Whalers used to be called the Hartford Whalers. And there's a place close to where I'm from. I'm kind of giving away where I live, but it's called the Stonington Borough, and it's like half the houses in there are 1700s houses, and there's always a plaque out front that says this is so and so the third's house. He was the first one to harpoon a baby whale, or this is blah blah blah. You know, it's like weird stuff, but it's historic, and it means Americans are sentimental. You know, we love America and fuck America, but that's true because half our buildings they're actually not even falling apart. They're really really good quality and probably very haunted, which Mike would probably like. He'd probably want to go watch. What do you watch? First one that comes to mind is a Conjuring, but that's go watch something spooky in there.
But I do like what Darryl was saying. I think like with like the parent company who kind of owns these different distilleries. Well, it's not the same distillery, but they've been doing a great job of resurrecting these stories. So for instance, I used to go to the distillery district, which is like downtown Toronto here, right? And you knew that once it was used to distill, but I had no clue like the backstory. So like what you'll find is like the Lot 40, JP Wiser's, was it Gooderham and Warts? These are all under the same umbrella, and I guess and it's Don who's overseeing all of that, right?
Yeah, I think he oversees everything but Canadian Club that's coming out of there.
Yeah.
He might even oversee that. I just don't see him talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those are the companies that the whiskey barons of Canada were exporting so much whiskey into the US for prohibition. So we kept Americans feeling good.
Hydrated.
The prohibition years.
Medicinal whiskey.
Yeah.
Medicinal whiskey. So I don't even know. I think a lot of it was just smuggled back under the guise of whatever. But
seems like ongoing pattern or trend over time where Canadians just provide Americans with whiskey and then they claim it as their own and shit.
All right. Hey, listen, I'm not taking shit from someone whose state animal is a fucking beaver, okay? We have a beaver for the 35 people that live in Canada, and then a bald eagle, which is not even the biggest eagle, not even like the most carnivorous eagle, but it's a bald eagle and it's a sign of freedom. So why is your state animal a beaver? Is there a reason besides, all he does is munch on wood and that's it? Like you don't even see beavers up in my part.
You got that eagle up in that tree and the beaver just cuts it down. And
it's a good point. Yeah. Beaver just gnawing through the tree. It only takes them a few minutes.
Is there like a beaver?
I think it is. It probably is. I'm not researching it.
I am drawing a complete blank, so I cannot agree or disagree at this point. All I know is it's on.
But it's funny because so I teach English and geography, right? So when I do this like introductory lesson where like grade 9 students get to recreate currency and like create this new like $20 bill and have things that they believe represent Canada. And it fucking drives me crazy when like 20 of them still throw a beaver on it. And I'm like, you had a chance to recreate our currency, redesign it. And I usually get Drake and a beaver.
Drake and a beaver.
we need Drake everywhere.
So that's what people think of when they think of Canada.
Maybe an igloo.
Yeah. An igloo and drizzle a little maple syrup over it, and that's Canada, and a little bit of whiskey here and there, but that's Canada. There's literally nothing else to it.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. But
park your car at the border and hop on the dog sleds.
Yeah, exactly. The Iditarod, is that Canadian or is that some? That's in like Alaska, I think. What's number 3 that we're drinking here? Let's get into number 3.
All right, number 3, we're moving into the Lot 40 Cask Strength Third Edition. It's a non-age stated. It's the first of the non-age stated cask strengths. The first 2 they had released was a 12-year-old and 11-year-old. This one is bottled at, it was a limited release. It's actually not available anymore. The bottle I have is 296 of 5,460.
Cool.
And it comes in at 57% alcohol.
Okay.
So this here is what, like, when I got on Instagram and American accounts started following me and found out I was Canadian, they were like, "Hey, Whiskey Morgue, we love your page. Can you get us some Lot 40 cask strength?" And I guess like Darryl would know more than me. The 11-year and the 12-year supposedly just completely took off. And like, I guess those who got word of it in the States were hunting it down. So here I was thinking I was building friendships at the beginning of my Whiskey Morgue career, and it was just people looking for a Lot 40 cask strength.
Can people come in? Can off topic, but it won't be off topic in a second. Are the borders for Canada open right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so as long as I'm assuming you have to be vaccinated and you can go into the country. And
interesting enough, if you're at like Hiram Walker there, where they distill, you can. It's across the river there. So if you're in Detroit, you literally cross the river and they're right there. They're like on the water looking at Detroit.
Interesting, because I might be getting my passport here soon for other things that I will again talk to you guys off camera. Things I don't think I can talk about yet. But if I do, I'm coming hunting. I'm coming whiskey hunting in Canada. We're all gonna meet up.
Yeah.
And we're all gonna have our own beaver, and we're all gonna just ride the beavers to each individual whiskey igloo, and we're gonna have a great time. It's gonna be so Canadian.
That's about as Canadian as you get.
It's that in the Caribou, right? And our Blantons up here, the Caribou crossing there.
Oh yeah, I wish
Yes.
you see that down here, and it's just I feel like it's probably ridiculously overpriced at like $250, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 100 up here, which is overpriced for what it is.
Yeah.
But
again, I feel like where Sazerac had the chance to again kind of highlight Canadian whiskey, they went with like a nice bottling. But again, what I was used to for years was the straight up like 40%. You don't know what it is. Here's a Canadian whiskey. So I feel like when they took that, and I first was acquainted with Caribou Crossing and saw the bottle, I'm like, okay, it's like the Canadian Blantons. But like, why is it 40%? Like, why are you doing that? Like, you know, because a lot of people don't even know that Sazerac has a distillery in Montreal, and like has acquired different distilleries close to where we are in Ontario. I think Collingwood was one of the recent ones.
Yep.
So I mean, like, there's opportunity there, but again, they keeps playing into the Canadian stereotype, like 40% kind of watered down. You're not sure what it is, and there's nothing wowing about it.
Right.
Yeah. Their barrel picks are night and day to the normal bottling. I don't know if they changed the percent, but anybody I've talked to that has a barrel pick.
I didn't even know that they did barrel picks for that.
Yeah. Just down in the States they do. So yeah, this is the third edition, as Mike alluded to. There's a 12 and an 11-year-old, which are much sought after. They were made before all the equipment at Hiram Walker was updated. Because of that, they have like that rye funk that a lot of people go after.
Right.
This is a very refined one. It's finished in French oak barrels.
I was gonna guess that this was finished.
It's non-age stated, so it's somewhere probably in the 5 to 10 year range.
So I've never had this, and off the bat with the nose, it's like I'm really digging what I'm getting, but it's not very characteristic of a rye, I would say.
No, I would assume based on based on the nose that it's upwards of at least 7 to 8 years because the oak is really pronounced. I'm getting,
Yeah.
but there's also that real nice dark fruit on like that's throughout. And that's funny you said that. I was gonna say this smells like a toned down Midwinter Night's Dram, and it's just very subtle dark fruit. So that's why I think it's toned down Midwinter Nights because Midwinter's is very pronounced. So I was gonna ask if this was finished. This is a great nose. You guys are turning me on to Canadian whiskey.
I was just about to ask where do you stand right now? We're like, entering just past the midway point, and
Not bad. Not bad. I'm definitely starting to sway an opinion, but we'll see how this is. And that will determine. Ooh, that's hot. That's hot. What do you guys get?
Lots of baking spice, cinnamon.
Mm.
Eventually turns into, like you said, it's into a 7 or probably 8 year, maybe a bit more. So you start to get some caramel toffee notes out of it. But what I love about this one is the finish just keeps going.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say
Like
off the
take
bat,
that sip and it just sits there after it's out of your mouth.
I don't know if it was the like the nose and then the initial taste where I was getting almost like spice cake, and then the finish just goes more to like a pepper, and it just lingers and lingers and lingers.
Yeah.
It's like
Same
two
thing.
and a half minutes. It just sits there. And then I don't know about you guys, I start to get the watering in the mouth, wanting the next sip.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like hot cayenne pepper on the way down. Like it's a hot pepper. Coats your entire mouth. It's very different than the nose. This is very spice. It's hot spice. There's not, I guess maybe those nice dark fruit port finish aspects are there lingering in the back, which is making this not like unbearable. But it's overall on the palate, at least, cinnamon, baking spice, allspice, and then turning into like, I think like a cayenne pepper type of finish on the back. And like, as I'm talking, I can still feel it like on the back of my tongue.
So take your next sip and swish it around your mouth.
Yeah.
For a bit. Get it in your cheeks, just do a good coating. And see if you can get some more flavors out of it.
A bit more oak after that.
Yeah.
Got up into my nose a little bit. This is spicy as hell.
This is my first time having this as well, so I'm with Connor here, just kind of like exploring it.
Yeah. I don't really get a whole lot of that caramel.
Not that's on the nose. It's in there, but I get, once you get past the spice of this, I've had it for a bit, you start to get the dark stone fruits out of it that you do get in the nose. They're very subtle against the peppers and cinnamons and baking spices, but they're in there.
This is it's so drastically different than the nose, and I don't hate it. I rarely come across whiskeys that I hate. What is the price on this, Darryl?
79, I think is what it was when it was released.
So we'll say like 65 American.
Yeah, probably about that. If you can get it down there. The reality is probably if it is down in the States, it's going to be one of those unicorn bottles that's a few $100.
Yeah. Would not pay a few $100s for this. I would probably pay like $60 is like my initial thought. I don't like this as much as the double barreled, or what you said was the double barreled.
The dark oak, yep.
The dark oak, yep. I like that better than double barrel dark oak. I'd give this like an 8.4. Like it's good. It's better than the baseline. It's not as good as the dark oak. And if I could get more of that dark fruit that I got on the nose that I was so enjoyable, this would be a much higher score. Because it's what you said, it's 57%. So what is that sitting in terms of a proof point?
114.
Like
114.
yeah, I was gonna say like 112, 140, yeah, which is right in my personal wheelhouse, but just a bit too spicy for me. Just a bit too spicy.
Yeah.
Darryl, have you had the 11 or 12?
Yeah, they're completely different. They would be like your old school ryes. Very, very rye forward. Trying to remember back to, it's been almost a year since I've had them.
Again, because I haven't had them.
Not as spicy.
Mhm.
If you ever come across one, there's some dusty bottles sitting in stores.
Yeah, there's because if you look online, I remember like when there was hype around it again, when I didn't know anything at the time and people were messaging me like, hey, can you get me lot 40 11-year-old 12-year-old, and I googled it and there was the whole like, it's like they literally coined it like the George T. Stagg of Canada. So I mean,
Wow.
Yeah, even on our secondary market, which isn't huge like it is in the States, guys selling it for $200, $300 if you want it.
Wow.
Whiskey Neighbor, who's does a lot of reviews out on the West Coast, he walked into a grocery store and there was like 12 of them just sitting on the shelf that somebody probably dug out of storage and was like, hey, we need to sell these.
This was was this the 11 or the 12-year-old?
This week. Yeah, I think it was the 12-year-old, the oldest one. Might have been the 11.
Interesting.
And basically every comment was like, I hope you bought them all.
So what are you guys giving this for a score?
When I first had it, I scored it pretty high. But I did have it against the 12 and the 11-year-olds. I think I gave it like an 8. Now that I've had it against the Alberta Premium Cask Strengths, I rank this one a little lower. It's for a cask strength that it's got that hot cask strength taste, but it's hard to find the depth in it. You drop a couple drops of water in it, open it up, you're going to find a different whiskey in there. So I think I rank it probably around like a 7 now. Because the Alberta premiums,
we're hard on ourselves, us Canadians, right, Connor?
I know.
But he hasn't had like batch one of the Alberta premium.
You know, we're doing this again. And I'll send out the sample. I mean, I don't have 3 yet, but I have 1 and 2. I'll get 3 though, and then we'll do this. Yeah.
And they're just that notch above this one. Especially batch 1 and batch 3.
Connor, that's the whistle pig juice we were talking about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of want to.
They're different because being that don't second guess yourself.
Well, no, I haven't Santa yet, so I can second guess myself.
You lose all your trustworthiness if you change your score.
I know. Yeah, I'll stick with it. You're right. Right. Thank you for calling me out on that.
No problem. So Ontario and Alberta have very different climates. So when something goes into a cask in Ontario, it's going in at probably 65% alcohol by volume. Because we're such a humid area, water actually gets pulled into the casks. I don't know if you've ever talked about that in any of your episodes or BWF episodes. So our proof goes down. In Alberta, it goes up because it's dry. So it's much like, I think Kentucky's the same way, right? It's dry. So you get that high cask stuff. That's why you can get the 67-70% cask strength stuff out of Kentucky.
And it's wild because like, I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, but like that stuff there where the Alberta premium, it's almost like a overtly fake vanilla that you get on it, and you're almost like, and you still get the spice, don't get me wrong, but there's just like sweetness to it where you almost question like, is there something in here, because it's like over the top sweet vanilla.
Interesting. So what are you giving this number 3 cask strength, Mike?
I'd give it an 8.
Okay.
Again, I'm going into this blind just like you, and I think it's solid. But like, again, if I'm going against like Cask Strength, other Cask Strength Canadian ryes, that's what knocks it down. But then I also kind of think about price. And again, I don't know what it looks like once it gets into the States, but here, when we see everything else kind of wildly marked up sometimes, the fact that we can still grab something like this for under $100 at Cask Strength is nice. So I feel like that's what I feel like, almost like I want to give it a 7.5, but it gets an 8 because, again, of value.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I agree with that. So number 4, sample number 4, Darryl, you have never had this, right? This is your first time having it.
This is my first time having it. I cracked the bottle. I poured the samples, sent them to you guys.
So this is all of our this is all we're all going into this blind. Then this is a triple blind right here. So explain what this is.
So this is lot 40 Rye Explorations is the series. I assume there's going to be more coming. This is release number 1. It's a cask strength. On the bottle, it says it was bottled August 2021. So this is very new. I think it hit our shelves 4 weeks ago. Mike, if that's right.
Yeah.
Again, it's cask strength. It's 55.5%, so a little less than the last one we had. And this one is finished for 17 months in first fill peated single malt casks.
I was just about to say this is a peated. This is something peaty about this. This is light, like an Isla Scotch. This is peaty. That's very interesting.
I don't know who's all using quarter casks. The only one that really comes to mind for me is Lefroy. I'm sure there's others out there that they source these casks from. I haven't asked him if he'll tell us who they're from yet. I haven't seen him post anything yet online. He's usually pretty forward with information. He's Dr. Don. He gives out information like it's nobody's business.
We might even have to get him on here one of these days when we do one of these, and educate us even further. But yeah, he's great. And what I love about him is he's accessible. He's out there. He'll answer questions, which is nice too, right?
Yeah.
So this nose is fantastic. This is by far my favorite nose of the 4. It's ranking a bit above the dark oak. But go ahead.
What works well with you doing this is that, like, we've seen what you posted in or what you've done on your podcast, right? And you're really open to those scotches and that peat, where I feel like this might be more divisive if you like gave this to like your typical bourbon drinker, right? Oh yeah. This is just strictly me talking.
I'm very curious how this is going to taste. So this is, you said, Darryl, there's no age statement on this, right?
It's another no age stated.
And it's finished for 17 months in those quarter casks.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah. So, cause I'm getting like a honey sweetness with that peaty, a little bit smoky and salty, like undertones, but it's very on the front. It's very like honey, almost honeysuckle sweet.
I feel like this is the first thing I've ever had that actually reminds me of campfire.
Yeah.
Have you had High West Campfire?
Yeah.
That's what I was pulling. It just doesn't have the bourbon notes in it. It's more, for me, it's less of an Isla peat, more of drawing a blank. Forget where the Belvanese from, but if you've ever had their Week of Peat series, it's a lighter peat. It's sweeter. It's brinier.
Yeah, it's that sweetness underneath it, right?
Yeah. So that's what I'm getting on the nose. That could be the rye coming through on the peat.
This nose is delicious.
But yeah, I had mixed emotions going into this. I've tried to avoid reading people's reviews. I've had a few people send me messages on it.
I saw one post. I forget where I came across it, and I was like, I'm like, please, like, I wish I didn't see that. Like, I don't want any influence. But I'm pretty fair that way with kind of being honest and jumping into it. But yeah, I was trying to avoid anything that was out there.
Well,
I'm gonna take my first sip.
Let's sip this. I'm excited. Oh,
That is nutty.
Mhm.
You guys get
oh,
nutty on that?
Yeah,
it's a bit nutty. It's
the
got
peanut
that.
brittle.
It's like,
Yeah, that's it. Peanut brittle.
and, and it's got that spice, but that peat is heavily. This is wow. This is delicious.
This is the
I'm gonna tell you that what I was told about this does not match to what I'm getting right now on this.
same.
The
I was told
nuts.
it was a Frankenstein. Not worth it. But yeah, Mike, you nailed that it's peanut brittle with smoke.
And rye spice is in there as well. Like there's a spicy aspect
At
throughout.
the back of the mouth.
What's
I
what's
get
bizarre
yeah.
is the review that I read was saying that like it fell flat, and I'm tasting this now and I'm like, no, this is dynamic. Like, how am I getting like this almost like Jim Beam peanut note with like rye, but also like this peat, right? Like
And on
it's
the
a lot in a good way.
yeah, on the back, I get a healthy amount of like a leathery
Yeah.
dark note on it on there too. With
Earthy
spice
too.
throughout. Earthy. Yeah. This is and what'd you say? This is about 110 proof. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it'd be 111.
And I hate to
Okay.
use the term smooth, but like it doesn't drink
No.
like that at all.
It's got a bit
This
of that cask strength spice to it at the back of the mouth, but it's what it doesn't have that Kentucky hug that everybody talks about.
Mhm.
I was just say
Even
it's
though
not like
a
the
bourbon, it doesn't have that warming effect inside.
yeah, it's not like the number 3 cast strength where there's just an overload of spice, and I think that's what stays with you. This in itself is very different, and it doesn't drink like an 111 proof, and there are several different things going on. I can see why people would say it's Frankenstein because it feels
Mhm.
like there's that peanut brittle, that nut note is that's a great descriptor. But the peat, the smoke, the spice, the finish, there's a lot of things jumbled together, and sometimes that doesn't equal something good. But in this case, this is a hitter. This is
Yeah.
a hitter.
It's a voyage in a glass. Like Mike said, like the closest thing I can relate it to as well is that high west campfire where you move through the scotch, the bourbon, the rye. It's like drinking your 3 favorites all at once.
What I will say, a few sips in, the finish gets a little iffy for me. It's not that long, and it gets almost like a bit of like a bittery note. It's very slight, nothing that's going to turn me off from it, but it is definitely, I think, the weakest point of this pour.
Yeah, I don't get bitter on the finish.
I mean,
just
I
get a
feel like
lot
it's
of
not as long, like as 3, but for that being said, it's delicious. So maybe that's why I keep sipping it like 100 times
Yeah.
over. That yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like I want to say like I think because Darryl and I try to avoid the reviews, but we both maybe saw like that same. I don't know which one it was, but what I saw was just kind of like trashing this, and I feel like this is where with what they're doing at lot 40, I'm like, yeah, flex that muscle, like do stuff like this. Like we're capable of so much more. Whereas like me being someone who was on the fence before, like not really inclined to buy like a Canadian whiskey, I was like, it was boring. Like it was straight up just like, you give me something 40%, it's gonna taste like anything else, like I'll buy Crown Royal. But this here, I'm like, this is yeah, it's that voyage. This is interesting. This is like a lot going on, and I'm like, this is I feel like to say it again, like Dr. Don kind of flexing his muscle and saying,
Yeah.
here's what we can do with what we have here.
Yeah. And
What? Yeah.
the freedom that they have with Canadian whiskeys compared to I'm not up to speed on American whiskey, but like bourbon, it's what goes in the barrel, what comes out. You can't do anything with it after it comes out to call it bourbon. You pour that you dump that barrel and it's crap. You're putting it back through and you're making vodka out of it. you guys have your mash bills that this is the recipe that's going into these barrels. Whereas what we have is these are all rye whiskey barrels for lot 40, and then they'll take them and they can blend them and still call them Canadian whiskey, even though so it'd be considered a small batch, right? Where you're taking a whole bunch of those barrels together. And they're starting to explore what can they get away with in the Canadian whiskey world to start changing those flavors and not just have that ethanol, caramel, toffee, well-known Canadian whiskey flavor taste. We keep bringing up Crown Royal. I've got one bottle of Crown Royal on my shelf. I don't drink it. It's the original release of the Northern Rye that won the awards. I drank one bottle. It was good. The other one's still sitting in the box. I can see it. Maybe one day it'll get open, but yeah, I don't buy Crown Royal. I don't buy Canadian Club. At least the bar rail stuff.
I would buy. Did we already mention how much this costs?
We didn't. This one is, I was actually looking it up. I think it's 89.
Oh, that's a steal. So like $75 American.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah.
So this is actually sitting right. This is very comparable to High West Campfire. That's around the price that High West Campfire is at around here. Maybe a few dollars more expensive. I never thought I'd taste a whiskey that is that diverse as High West Campfire was. I don't remember. I reviewed it on my podcast. I don't remember what I gave it.
Yeah.
But, this is just as different. This is like one of the most unique pours I've ever had, and it's got a lot going on in a very good way. You know, they really crafted this and put all these different notes together very beautifully in this. It's not just a jumbled mess where they're trying to throw a bunch of different things in here and just say this is different. No, you can tell that this was crafted and they knew what they wanted and they got exactly, I'm sure,
I didn't know what to expect from this at all. And like I said, I tried to avoid reviews, but then I unfortunately saw the one, and I still kind of thought, even though I was trying to be open-minded, I thought I'd go into this and be like, oh, like peated cask, like, oh, there's a little hint of something in the background, but didn't expect to have this. Like, I'm completely thrown off in a good way by tasting this.
Yeah, I'm going to relate. I think Lot 40 has the fan club that Star Wars has. So there's an expectation to keep the Lot 40 line very familiar. And this steps right outside of that line. So much like Star Wars when they rehashed it into Episode 7, got all kinds of hate. We won't talk about Episode 8 because that is a complete travesty. But Episode 7, like the fanboys, they're so set in their ways with Star Wars. This is not Star Wars. I can feel the reviews that probably shit on this one are expecting that Lot 40 Cask Strength 12, 11, third non-age stated release, that it would keep going in that line. But I think it's going to be exciting to see where Dr. Don takes this explorations and what he's doing with it.
If it's anything, all I was going to say is if it's anything like, if the direction is going into something as different and as tasty as this, I'm giving this an 8.8. And if this is something that if this is the direction that Lot 40 is going in with these, I don't know if it's an experimental release or a limited batch or something like that, they're going in the right direction, because this is quality. This is quality stuff. And I think an 8.8 is deserving of this, given I'm a big peated Scotch guy. I'm a big Islay Scotch guy. So that's kind of expected for me. But I think anybody can at least appreciate this in terms of pulling these notes, pulling the different aspects of what they're trying to do, and it's quality. It's not just jumbled together.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a fair score. On initial tastings and kind of where my head was at from the one DM I received on this one, I went in with lowered expectations, but I think you're pretty close with that score of 8.8. I'm excited to actually now sit down and spend a week or two with this over time and see how it evolves, take my notes, take some in-depth tastings and nosings with it, and I think I'm gonna have to find something really strange in it to lower that score.
Yeah.
I think like because it's so niche, like I almost want to give it like a 9, only because like it really just sits upon itself with Campfire. And like I said, I'm completely blown away by tasting this, and I'm like, this is like, yeah, other than Campfire, I've never had something like this. So it's kind of just sitting there on a pedestal right now. But that being said, I was gonna say that earlier that um, the fact that like I feel like most bourbon drinkers I've talked to like in the US, obviously this is just like stereotyping, um, are almost thrown off by like the peated, smoky um Isla stuff. Which is like you're far from that. But like I look at it as like people who like bourbon like bold flavor. And I found it like a natural transition to also appreciate that stuff as well. But it's not typically the bourbon drinker's preference. So I mean, obviously you go against that because you drink all of this. So I feel like that's why you can appreciate this the same way. But maybe it is like what Darryl was saying. Maybe it's this Canadian thing too, where like you've been accustomed to lot 40 being the cask strength 11, 12, and then even the non-stated stuff like we just had, completely left field. But to me, in a good way. But I guess it's not for everyone. So it's polarizing, really.
It's polarizing. It's delicious. I mean, you guys, I wasn't expecting what to think after this little blind flight, but at least with lot 40, you guys have turned me on to it. I think this is a quality brand. If this is something that I happen to see on a shelf here in New England, I will scoop it up. And I'm turned on to it. I'm turned on to it. I will no longer, at least with lot 40, continue my downward spiral of just absolutely shitting on Canadian whiskey. I think it just took.
He finally admits where he stood with it.
You know what it is? I just had to keep on shitting on it until one of you guys just sent me samples, and I'm like, all right, here's some free whiskey.
I think he's gonna just like he's getting some good stuff, and he's gonna be like, I still think it's trash. Send me some more samples down this way. If you can't send me a bottle to try out.
And it's hard to convert, not that you're a true bourbon drinker, it's hard to convert a bourbon drinker to really anything else. Bourbon has a very specific, I'm going to get a lot of hate on this, a very specific palate. It's very appealing. It's an amazing whiskey. I love bourbon. It's probably the most bottles I have on my shelf. Irish might give it a secondary run. Of course, I don't know how many Canadian whiskeys I've got floating around here either, but it's hard to get away from that really solid bourbon flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's depth in it once you've learned how to find it, to get past that caramel, that toffee, that vanilla that bourbon presents itself as, and to get the uniqueness out of all of them. And Canadian whiskey is the same way. You've got to spend time with it. You've got to try different brands. You've got to get past the bar rail. Like then you start to see stuff. So Mike and I will regroup. I'm excited to regroup with them. We'll figure out what we're going to send you next.
Yeah.
Do we step away from the Canadian Ryes and we step into more of what we would buy over top of your Caribou Crossings? Or not your Caribou Crossings, but the Caribou Crossings, which I know is more available down in the States. We've got to figure out where we take you on the next path. There's a
Yeah,
lot of stuff.
I think for me, like I said, because I was on the fence for the longest time, like this idea of like I'll bring it back to like the whistle pig stuff is just that, you know, I saw this buzz about whistle pig in the States, and then, you know, that's why I'm glad that, and I feel like we need to go there at some point with the Alberta premium stuff, is I'm like, here we are like buying whistle pig for $100+, and finally Alberta premium was like, let us put out something that, you know, is at cask strength, like we're the source, we're the MGP of Canada, and like here it's like what, between $60 and $70, and I'm like, damn, like we have that up here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, now I that's what, like between lot 40, like I said, the double oak, and then the release of the Alberta premium cask strength, I was like converted. I was like, Canada has a lot to offer right now, and I think we just keep falling under under those same misconceptions and stereotypes. And you know, like I said, when people show me like the Canadian section of a liquor store, I'm seeing stuff that I'm not even familiar with. Aside from Crown Royal, there's some offerings there I don't even have a clue what they are, but they're Canadian whiskey.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you guys, Darryl, thank you for sending the samples. That was very kind of you. Both you guys, thank you for coming on. This was fun. This is the first time I've ever done this on the podcast where I'm going in blind. We're doing multiple whiskeys. This was cool. This was fun. You know, the time flew by, and this is something we're definitely going to have to do again very soon. So we'll coordinate on that. Why don't you tell the people listening where they can find where they can find both of you guys at?
Darryl, you want to go?
Sure. You can find me at Whiskey Sith on Instagram. Very small presence on Twitter, and I just launched my website, whiskeySith.com.
That's breaking news. That's the first.
Is, depending when this airs, that could be breaking news, or it could be non-breaking news. But we'll see.
News, yeah.
You can find me at Whiskey Morgue. I mean, that's pretty much all I have right now. But I feel like Darryl, I feel like I'm getting to a point where there's more I want to say. And you're kind of restricted on Instagram. So I'm kind of like giving the elevator pitch for everything I do. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. But who knows, maybe next time we meet, I'll have a website to plug as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys are both very well versed in your whiskey knowledge and what you guys do. Both your guys' niches on Instagram is phenomenal. And, you know, I just want to say thank you again. You guys are two of my best buds there on Instagram, and, you know, my two best Canadian guys. You know, I think you're the only two Canadian guys I know. So, again, you guys, thank you so much for coming on.
By default,
it was a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. By default. I mean,
and we do know Jim, and we do know George up here. So
yes. And, you know, if I knew Drake, I'm sure I'd like him way better than you guys. But anyways,
I don't know. Maybe.
No. He doesn't drink whiskey. I don't like him. But everybody,
what are you talking about? He's got
in.
Virginia Black. We're never gonna end this episode.
No.
He's got Virginia Black. That's his bourbon.
Oh, really? Is it?
Yeah, I won't talk about it. I don't think it's any good.
Oh,
that 1980s perfume bottle.
I honestly didn't even know that was a thing. Drake has a bourbon?
Yeah,
he does.
Is it like it's some shitty bourbon that Drake just puts his name on because it's Drake, or
it doesn't have his name on it?
No. Is it the guy from Diageo who did it with him?
I don't know. It's the distiller, or yeah, Connor's gonna want to cut this completely out of the episode.
No, dude, I don't edit. This is
I think it's the same one that like Scotch Trooper had a really popular bourbon created or something, whiskey for him before he passed. The biggest knock on it is, like Mike said, it's literally like you walk into like the glamorous whatever early 1920s. It's like a gold bottle with like semi-translucent glass at the bottom, and I think it's called Virginia Black.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
I don't know if the juice inside it's good or not. I refuse to buy it just based on the look of the bottle.
Yeah.
I respect the hell out of that. But hey, you guys, thanks again for coming on. Obviously, the best way to support the show, you guys, everyone that's listening, just make sure you're subscribed. Who Gives a Dram on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok as well. And Darryl, Mike, was a pleasure. And always remember, you guys, whiskey's the water of life. So let's start. Bang.
My hands are tired of paying my bills, staring at a bottle, I'm aiming to kill. Weeks passing by and the seasons keep changing. I'm playing my song, trying to make me a name. People say as they walk out the bar, the kid's gone places, maybe even a star. They don't play country down in Nashville today, just the same chord progression with nothing to say. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. They use auto-tune now down on Music Row, 'cause true country died there a long time ago. No, they don't play Waylon on the boulevard, but they'll do anything to be rock stars. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. But I do believe there is hope for us yet, 'cause there's millions of people who cannot forget the way Johnny Cash brought a tear to their eyes, or how Marty Robbins painted Texas skies. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. A grown man cry. A grown man cry. I won't let country die.